So where are you going to put the speaker? Next to you. All right. Okay, we're live. Start talking. So, Paul, why don't you start talking? Hi, Seymour.
We are out here today. We are out here today in front of the Consulate of the United Arab Emirates protesting the war in Yemen that they participate in with Saudi Arabia and a lot of U.S. help. This war has been going on for 7 years. By one estimate, 60,000 children have starved this year alone. And during the whole war, just thousands and thousands of Yemenis have died. I don't exactly know the politics of the people involved, but I'm sure if Saudi Arabia likes the government that's in there now, I do not approve of that government. They are not a force for good. And the Houthi rebels, as they call them, are the local people fighting against the Saudi war, and we should just stay out of this. There's no reason for us to be involved. Without our weapons and logistical support, that war would end in 2 weeks. And without our help to keep that blockade tight, if they would only let the food in, people want to send food, but they can't get through. The main port, Hudaydah, it's blocked. So people are starving. We are calling on Congress to introduce a war powers resolution. There's some word that Elizabeth Warren is thinking seriously about that, and we really encourage her to go ahead and do it. But any senator can do it. Pramila Jayapal and Peter DeFazio have already said they're going to introduce a war powers resolution in the House. And back in Trump's time, there was a successful use of the War Powers Act for the first time in 40 years, but Trump vetoed it. So let's just do it again. We have to stop this war in Yemen. Open up the blockade. We're asking people who hear us today to call your reps in Congress. Tell them to do all they can, which is to support a war powers resolution to stop the war in Yemen. The great thing about the War Powers Act is that if someone introduces a resolution, it can't just languish in committee like so many of our bills do. All the best bills usually just get lost in the shuffle. But if you introduce a war powers resolution, it has to be voted on. And that's what we want to have happen tomorrow, if not this afternoon. So please, let's stop the war in Yemen. Let the aid in, send more humanitarian aid to Yemen. Thank you for listening.
Susan, hold the banner for him.
Yeah, we do. Yeah. We have some.
Somebody hold the banner for Paul.
Go ahead. U.S. Saudi, UAE, let Yemen. U.S. Saudi, UAE. Oh.
U.S. Saudi, UAE, let Yemen be free.
U.S. Saudi, UAE, let Yemen be free. U.S. Saudi, UAE, let Yemen be free. U.S. Saudi, UAE, let Yemen be free. That's it. We can keep going. We don't want
That's the message, baby.
We don't want this war to stop. We don't want a photo op. We want this war to stop. We don't want a photo op.
We want this war to stop.
We don't want a photo op.
We want this war to stop.
We don't want a photo op.
We want this war to stop. What in the world are these people doing on a street corner talking about an invasion of the country of Yemen? We're here because already 377,000 Yemenis have either been killed in the war or have died of starvation because of the war. Does it not seem a little bit strange that the very countries that are so concerned about the criminal Russian invasion of Ukraine at this very moment are invading Yemen and have killed tens of thousands of Yemenis? And yet our media covers nothing about this hypocrisy. How can you be opposed to an invasion at the same time that you are carrying out the worst invasion going on in the world today? Enough of this hypocrisy. It is time for Russia to get out of Ukraine, and it is time, after 7 years, that is 2,555 days, that we have been invading Yemen. Enough is enough. The only good news is that we have an opportunity coming up soon for the United States Congress to show some guts and offer a war powers resolution that would end our involvement in the invasion of Yemen. We need everyone to contact your representatives in Congress. Tell them no more excuses. Vote for the War Powers Resolution and make sure that President Biden doesn't get in the way. Biden, stop your invasion of Yemen. Congress, pass a war resolution which would end our country's involvement in the worst humanitarian crisis in the world today. Enough is enough. No more hypocrisy. Let's hear the truth. The truth is that we and the United Arab Emirates, whose consulate is located in this building, together with Saudi Arabia, have conducted a vicious invasion of a very poor country. It is time to end this murder, and time to end this hypocrisy, and time to stop starving the people of Yemen to death. Please contact your representatives in Congress. Tell them enough is enough. Pass a war powers resolution now.
As Paul said, we need to stand with the people of Yemen right now, because as Russia is invading Ukraine and causing hundreds of civilian casualties, for 7 years, the United States has been arming and supporting the Saudi-UAE coalition to bomb and occupy and genocide the people of Yemen, the poorest country in the Middle East. And right now, while all the focus is on Ukraine, and it's right for people to focus about what's going on in Ukraine, we can't ignore these wars that are going on in Yemen, in Syria, in Iraq, what's still happening in Afghanistan, in Somalia, in Palestine. Because the United States and its leaders and the so-called Western world and its leaders, Joe Biden and Justin Trudeau and Boris Johnson, well, they're standing and pointing the fingers at Russia. They're standing on a pile of corpses that they created in these countries, and that they continue to create. And you look at the media coverage of what's been going on in Ukraine, and you see how this double standard really shows. You see them say, well, this is happening in Ukraine, in Europe. This isn't one of those third world countries where people have brown eyes and brown skin, where you expect this to happen. Well, what is the justification? That's obvious. What they're trying to do is give us the idea that it's not okay for there to be a war in Europe, but it's okay for there to be a war in the Middle East or in Africa.
That's right.
Well, it's not right for there to be these imperialist wars in any of these countries. And so, as much as we have to fight and stand and support the Ukrainian people and oppose an escalation of the war there, oppose U.S. involvement and risking nuclear brinkmanship with Russia, we have to stand and continue fighting and showing our support and our solidarity with the people of Yemen, with the people of the whole world. We can't forget what is going on in Yemen. And these politicians who made these promises a few weeks ago that they were going to pass a war powers resolution, we can't allow them to use this new headline to just brush it aside and forget about it. Because they want to use this to, it's clear what the interests of the U.S. government are right now. And as much as they say they don't want to get more involved, this conflict is continuing to escalate and continuing to escalate. So we have to continue fighting and, yeah, end this war in Yemen now. End all wars.
Can I say a word?
I'm Cole Harrison, Executive Director of Mass Peace Action. I just want to say a word that it's time for the Yemen war to stop. I don't want to repeat what's already been said. It's been 7 years. We're coming up on the 7th anniversary of that destructive war. The United States is funding Saudi and UAE. I shouldn't say they're funding because they're paying with their oil money, but we're shipping the arms, we're providing the intelligence, the logistical support, and all the things necessary to conduct the war. And it's part of our it's part of our military-industrial complex, it's part of our global strategy to contain China. Now we're seeing that even though Biden on his campaign trail said that Saudi was a pariah nation for killing Khashoggi, and saying that he would stop the war in Yemen, he's now changed his mind. And Biden administration is continuing their war, deepening their alliance with Saudi, and saying, oh, we have to fight against China, so we better make sure to keep Saudi on our side in the global struggle for power and money. So this has to stop. The American people should not stand for it. We have to stand up. Now on Yemen, on Ukraine, Mass Peace Action is calling a rally this Sunday at 1 p.m. at the State House steps with three demands: immediate ceasefire in Ukraine, Russian troops out, and to end to NATO expansion. We must stop arming the belligerents. We should not send arms to Ukraine. We should not send more troops to Eastern Europe. We should not apply sanctions to Russia. The focus needs to be on negotiations. And we ask all peace-loving groups to join us in this call. There will be an organizing meeting tomorrow at 3 p.m. We did a coalition activity back in early February. We'll do another one. And the coalition meeting will be tomorrow at 3 p.m. We hope the Quakers will be there, and UAWM and all peace-loving groups will show up and help to do this. We're joining in a call launched by an international coalition which consists of Code Pink, the No to NATO Network in Europe, the Stop the War Coalition in the UK, and the Campaign for Nuclear Disarmament. So that's, and we've already seen actions posted in Providence, Fall River, New Haven, Portland, and so on. So this will be an International Day of Action on Sunday. 1 p.m. at the State House steps in the Common.
I gotta go.
I speak on behalf of mothers, of parents, of grandparents, and of children everywhere, not only in the Ukraine, but in Yemen. We must not forget the children of Yemen who are being starved and bombed with no supplies. We are complicit in this, and it is scandalous. It is unethical, immoral, and I cry out for all of us in the world who need to come together and address these atrocities. The United States can help. We can help stop this. It is so important that we do. Join us and help to stop this immoral war on the people of Yemen.
So I want to talk a little bit more about this hypocrisy. You know, we see the blatant racism in the media about how, you know, the invasion in Ukraine is being talked about and compared to wars in the Middle East and in the rest of the world. It's really unacceptable. I think we have to denounce that racism for what it is and hypocrisy for what it is. And really expose this hypocrisy across the board. You know, it's not just in the media. The hypocrisy, as others have touched on, of representatives talking about this war is truly laughable. And I think it's really important because it sheds a light into really what it's going to take to end this war and to advance the anti-war movement here in the U.S. As we talked about with this War Powers resolution, many of the Democrats that sponsored that resolution under Trump have stayed silent and are unwilling to take any action under the Biden administration. But yet, folks like AOC, Ayanna Pressley, Elizabeth Warren, all of these people who have been silent about the War Powers resolution are now coming out against the invasion in Ukraine. And not only that, they're saying that any U.S. intervention in Ukraine needs to be approved by Congress, which basically means as long as World War III is authorized by Congress, we're good. Which is absurd, and we need to be frank about that these politicians, they're very much in it for their own political gain, they're very much in it for their own career ambitions. I think, you look at AOC, what she spoke about earlier in her term, and see now comparing to her actions over these past few years, it's very clear she's not for the people. And I think we have to be honest about that, because otherwise we're going to continue to go in circles and not get anywhere. And we're not going to be able to end the invasion in Ukraine. We're not going to be able to end the war in Yemen. We're not going to be able to end any of these imperialist wars unless we really challenge and call these politicians out and demand something beyond that, beyond just promises year after year. We need to go beyond that. We need to be united on that. So that's really it for me. End the war in Yemen, end the war in Ukraine, end wars everywhere.
Yeah.
Right.
Anyone else?
I want to talk a little bit about why the people of Massachusetts, the people of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, have a special responsibility to oppose the war in Yemen. And that is because of one of the most powerful institutions in this country is headquartered in Waltham, Massachusetts. And that is Raytheon Technologies, one of the largest weapons producers in the entire world and a major supplier of bombs and missiles to the United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia. Many of the bombs that have been landing on Yemen are manufactured by a company headquartered right here in Massachusetts. Yemen may seem like it's far away, it's on the other side of the world, but an incredibly powerful institution right here in the Bay State. Is making a ton of money and has massive political influence over the decision making. It's one of the reasons why this war continues to go on, even though it's unpopular, even though the American people do not support Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates war in Yemen. Now let's talk a little bit about Raytheon's political influence, because this is a bipartisan problem. Our current Secretary of Defense, the head of our military, General Lloyd Austin, before he joined the Biden administration, he was on Raytheon's board of directors. One of Trump's last Secretaries of Defense, Mark Esper, before he joined the Trump administration, was the head of lobbying, a vice president at Raytheon Technologies. So if you're asking yourself, why didn't President Biden follow through on his promise to make Saudi Arabia a pariah state, to end our role in the war in Yemen? We have to ask ourselves about the massive influence of the military-industrial complex. And that military-industrial complex, their major representative here in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, is Raytheon Technologies. So the people of Massachusetts have to raise their voices. A war powers resolution is being introduced. Every single member of Congress, of the House of Representatives, will have to vote whether to continue to support this war. That means your representative will vote on whether to continue this war. Now, Congress voted against it under Trump. We're going to find out whether this is a partisan issue or whether they really believe that the United States should not be involved in a genocide in Yemen. Now let's talk a little bit about the United Arab Emirates. We are here because upstairs is the Consulate General of the United Arab Emirates. They are a major party to this war. They have been allied with Saudi Arabia in the destruction of Yemen for 7 years. Let's talk a little bit about our good ally, the United Arab Emirates. They are not a democracy. They are a monarchy. They are one, along with Saudi Arabia, these are some of the most regressive and authoritarian nations on the planet Earth. So why does the United States support them? The simple answer, follow the money. The United States is the largest exporter of weapons in the world. Saudi Arabia is the largest importer of weapons in the world, and the UAE is not far behind them. So what happens to these weapons? We know that they're found in the rubble of food production sites, of hospitals, of schools, of school buses. These weapons have been used to kill children. They find fragments of bombs that say "Made in the USA" on them. This is not just a war being prosecuted by Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates. This is very much an American war. This is very much a Massachusetts war. But even more, perhaps more concerning, is that United States weapons that have been sold to the United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia have been repeatedly found in the hands of Al-Qaeda affiliated groups in Yemen. They are taking our weapons that we sell them and trading them to Al-Qaeda affiliated groups in the country of Yemen. Are these good allies?
No.
Do you want your tax dollars to be used to support allies like these?
No. No.
Well, your representative is going to vote on it. Because the planes that are flying over Yemen, the bombs that are being dropped are made in the USA. The planes that are dropping them are made in the USA. The pilots that are hitting the buttons to drop the bombs are trained in the USA. This war cannot continue without American support. And that's why we're demanding an end to it. All we have to do is stop sending the spare parts, stop sending the repairmen, and we can ground the air forces of the UAE and Saudi Arabia. We can stop the carnage. We can end this genocide once and for all. And all we have to do is remove our support. But there's massive influence from the military-industrial complex, from Raytheon, from the governments of Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates. So that's why we need to raise our voices. That's why we need to tell our members of Congress, you better vote for this War Powers Resolution. So make a demand, call 1-833-STOP-WAR. The lines are open. All you have to do is punch in your zip code. You will be connected with your member of Congress and tell them simply, a War Powers Resolution is coming to your desk soon, and you better vote yes on it. Tell them that this is an issue that you vote on. The genocide in Yemen cannot continue, and it cannot continue in our name. So make a demand, end the war in Yemen!
End the war in Yemen.
End the war in Yemen!
End the war in Yemen.
Thank you. U.S. Saudi UAE, let Yemen be free. U.S. Saudi, let Yemen be free. U.S. Saudi UAE, 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 let Yemen be free. Well, I also want to credit, this isn't just us here on this corner in downtown Boston. There are demonstrations across the country going on, in Los Angeles, in Chicago, in New York City. People are rallying at weapons manufacturers, at consulates like these, at their members of Congress to demand that a War Powers Resolution be passed, to ground the UAE Air Force, to ground the Saudi Air Force. That is what we're talking about. We are not alone. We are standing in solidarity with over 70 organizations
that have supported a day of action on March 1st. March 25th is the anniversary of the start of this war. And if you want to know how much this is a U.S. war, the war was announced not in Riyadh, not in Abu Dhabi, but in Washington, D.C. This is an American war, and it is our responsibility to end it. We have committed that by March 25th, we demand that a World Powers Resolution be reintroduced into the House of Representatives and the United States Senate. An illegal war under President Donald Trump is an illegal war under Joe Biden. I don't care what color the president's tie is. I want to end the genocide in Yemen. This is a bipartisan problem. Republicans, Democrats, this war started under Barack Obama, it intensified under Donald Trump, it is intensifying still. We are seeing now under Joe Biden, we're seeing some of the worst famine in years. The UN has told us that a child in Yemen may die every 75 seconds because of the effects of this war. That's not coming from a fringe group, that's coming from the UN World Food Program, headed by David Beasley, who's the former Republican governor of South Carolina. Every 75 seconds, a child is dying. And what for? For the victory that UAE and Saudi Arabia hope to attain? For the control and oppression that they hope to maintain over the people of Yemen? For the profits of companies like Raytheon Technologies and Lockheed Martin and General Dynamics and Northrop Grumman and Boeing? We say no. The military-industrial complex has controlled this country for far too long. And we cannot realistically say that we live in a democracy when companies like these are the ones who are dictating policy, and not the popular will of the people of Massachusetts or the people of the United States of America. These alliances are not popular. This war in Yemen is opposed by a broad spectrum of people, from libertarians to progressives and socialists. No one thinks that an alliance with Saudi Arabia is a good idea, except those who stand to profit massively from it. We need to demand an end to the war in Yemen now. Your representative is going to be voting on this soon, and they need to hear from you. They need to hear that you care about this issue, because I promise you, they're hearing from lobbyists that represent Raytheon Technology. They are hearing from lobbyists that represent Saudi Arabia. They are hearing from lobbyists that represent the United Arab Emirates upstairs. And they need to hear from you, and they need to hear that if they don't vote yes on a War Powers resolution, they will lose your vote. Because that's what these politicians care about. Don't judge them by their promises. Don't judge them by the letters that they send. Judge them by the votes that they take. Judge them by what they do, not what they promise. So we demand every member of Congress vote yes on a War Powers resolution. Hold President Joe Biden accountable. He said he was going to turn Saudi Arabia into a pariah nation. Now, I don't know about you, but a pariah nation is not one that I would continue to sell hundreds of millions of dollars of bombs and missiles to. So we're holding President Joe Biden to his promise. End the war in Yemen, end the war in Yemen right now.
End the war in Yemen.
End the war in Yemen.
End the war in Yemen. End the war in Yemen. End the war in Yemen. End the war in Yemen. End the war in Yemen. End the war in Yemen.
Okay, people, stand together in a group. You're going to look better. Just for a minute.
Everyone come together. Let's get a group shot.